Hi, I'm Zachary Swingle, and today I'll be doing an informative essay about how to change battery cable ends in a car and why you would do so, as well as a short, brief history, incredibly short, incredibly brief, because no one wants to record events about when battery cable ends were made. This is my hunk of junk car. It is a 2002 Chevrolet Malibu. I call it Suzy Q. I've pretty much had assistance in rebuilding the entirety of the motor. And the previous owners of it had no idea what they were doing, and when they put the battery cable ends on, they crimped them down. So I had to cut off the ends. And because of the uncertainty at the time, it was not recorded. But today we're going to replace it with these, which are bolt types. My battery here is a side mount battery, which is used in many older vehicles, and the most common type of battery cable end is the SAE battery cable end. It is a top post that has two different diameters of cables to help with polarity. Battery cables, or battery cable ends, attached to the battery to help maintain electrical flow throughout the vehicle. My vehicle was having issues with these two cables. It was the positive end was shorting out. My battery, I'm really bad at this. Okay. My car would not start. I'd hook in the cable ends, and when I went to crank it up, it would just click. And then I'd have to come out, screw the battery back in. Not only that, but the positive cable end tended to overheat, which is another sign of bad cable ends. There's a high likelihood that either the previous owners of the vehicle neglected to change the battery cable ends or put on new ones that were not able to handle the load that the vehicle had. So, first you have to determine whether or not the battery cable end needs to come off. In my case, it was bent on, so it had to come off. In this case, it'll be bolted on, so I can just unscrew it when I need to. So I simply put the wires together, slide it into place. Slide it into place. And bolt her down. Of course, have to make sure that the two sides are connected so that it actually gets grounded and doesn't completely short out my car, because that would not be good. I have to push that in, go in. There we go. Now, these cables probably aren't the exact kind I need for the vehicle, and that's fine, because it's side mount, and it'll do the job that it needs to do. Of course, it is best if you get the appropriate cable ends, and it's probably even better if you took it to an actual mechanic instead of doing it yourself, but I'm broke, so I'm gonna do it this way. There is the negative end. Now, for the positive end. Of course, when you unhook a battery, you want to unhook the negative end and leave the positive end in. Helps prevent, shorting out the car. But when connecting the car back together, you want to put the positive end on first. Again, connection problems. If you leave the negative end on, the electrons will flow out, and it'll just kind of short circuit your car, which is not the best thing. Now, this car of mine is relatively new. It's a decent car, aside from having to replace everything in it because it fell apart. Christ. Get those put them together. If you couldn't tell, this is my first time changing battery cable ends on this car and putting on this kind of end. I'm used to the SAE top mounts. There's also the JIS, but those are typically used in Japanese style vehicles, or older Japanese vehicles. And they're not exactly the best. They're pretty bad, actually, if my reading was correct. There we go. JIS cable ends are similar to the SAE, which is the top mount batteries that you all are probably most used to, but their positive end is significantly larger than the negative end, and that was to help with polarity problems, but it didn't really do much. It just kind of made the battery cables look weird and made them a lot more difficult to change. Now, the issue with my vehicle might not have truly been the battery cable ends. It could be the actual cables. This car is old. It's 18 years old. I told you earlier, it's 2002 Chevrolet Malibu. It's about 18 years old. So it could be a number of things. It could be a fuse. It could be the cables themselves. It could just be that the car doesn't want to work anymore. It's not the battery, though. This battery is new. But I might need to replace it because my old cables like to burn holes into my lovely battery ends here, which, isn't exactly desirable. But I'd say it's in your best interest to change the battery cable ends just about every time that you change a battery, because these battery cable ends are going to burn holes into the outlets of the batteries here over time, and it'd be in your best interest just to change them when you change the battery out. And it would be even better if you got an ease of access, and such as the ones that I have here, that you just have to unscrew. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that they're better. It doesn't mean that they're worse. They're just a lot easier to change. That's all it is. And, so here it is. Battery cable ends are on. Just a little bit more tightening and we're done. And, then I suppose I can go over some more history and some other things you need to look out for. If your light's dim... I know. If your car doesn't start and it makes a clicking noise when you go to cut on the engine, that's generally a sign that some electrical issue is wrong. I'd start with trying to diagnose it, or trying to start with the battery cable ends. Of course, could be the battery, especially if you live in a snowy climate, where, as you should know, in snowy climates or in exceptionally hot climates, batteries have a tendency to fail. Of course, it's not guaranteed that they fail. Oh god, I can't get it there. There it is. It's not guaranteed that the battery will fail because of the climate. It's also not guaranteed that it won't. It depends on the brand of the battery, the quality of the battery, and a lot more factors that have to do with your car than you think. Such as where the battery is located, how high above the ground it is, etc. There's a lot of factors that go into play here. Now, the main thing you need to worry about with the battery is, well, the main quality, you need to worry about the quality of the battery. Mine is a cheap battery, so it probably won't last too awful long, which isn't a problem. This is just a here and there car, so I don't need it to make it to Mount Everest and back, or drive even to the next state. All I need is for this vehicle to get me to town and back. Now, more problems. Usually, you can tell when the battery's corroded, there will be a bluish-green crystal that begins to form on the battery. Bluish-greenish-white. Crystal-like substance that begins to form, which is mostly the acid. Oh, yeah, definitely it's connected. Which is ow, 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 that burnt, ow. Okay. It usually is the acid built up from the inside of the battery. which, you know, isn't the best thing to have happen. Could be battery pressure. It might just be the fluid level in your battery overflowing. But corrosion will also impede your vehicle's ability to start, your vehicle's ability to keep running, and it just generally doesn't smell good. And so that's about all I have for this. I'm not perfect at this, and I'm terrible at explaining it, but I thought I'd try to teach you how to change battery cable ends and give you a few reasons why you should. Thanks.